This video today will be about nostril piercings. Hey guys, if you're new to the channel, my name is Ruben Lu. I'm a body piercer. I pierce in Tijuana, Mexico, but I've traveled and pierced all over the world for the last over 10 years. And I'm here to share a little bit of the information that I've learned over these years. And I want to share it with you guys, and I want to basically get you more prepared for when you go get a piercing. So if you want to check out a little bit more of my work, you can check out, if you want to check out my work, go to my Facebook page. I'll leave it in the I'll leave it in the description below. Also, check out my Instagram. I post work that I do almost on the daily. And yeah, so let's get started with the video. I think that one of the biggest things that have made an impact during my career when it comes to nostril piercings is the jewelry. So when I started piercing here in Mexico, and at this time we only had nostril screws that were already pre-bent. So whenever you were gonna do a nostril piercing, the jewelry was already bent. And so it didn't really matter which side the nostril was gonna go on, and it didn't matter the thickness of the cartilage of the person. And the other thing is that the bend they had was really, really tight, so those were really hard to get in and out of the piercing. So those right away were kind of really obnoxious to deal with. And then moving ahead in time, around 2006, this is when I started working in the US, and this is when I came across nostril screws, but they weren't pre-bent. So what that means is that the nostril screw comes already straight, and usually what happens is that you take a look at the client's nose and you see how thick their nostril is, also the placement where it's going to go, if it's going to go a little bit more forward, a little bit more back, and also the side that it's going to go on. So usually coming straight, and then you bend it accordingly to your client's anatomy. So those were already kind of a step up in when it comes to jewelry compared to the pre-bent nostril screws. But the thing that I have with those is that they kind of spin around a little bit in the nose, and sometimes you can see them kind of sneaking out of the client's nostril, like on the bottom kind of looks like a shiny booger. And the thing about it is that usually when you take a look at your client's nose and you see that you want to leave maybe like a 5/16 length for swelling, that might be okay at first, because in the first few days there might be a little bit of swelling, so you don't want that piece to be tight. But then usually at about a month, we ask clients to come back in so you can adjust that length so it sits a little bit tighter, maybe to like a 1/4 inch or something like that, so it doesn't move around. And the thing is that a lot of clients forget or don't come back. So what ends up happening with that piece of jewelry that's loose in the nose is that a lot of times it gets caught on a towel when they're drying their face, or it gets caught on a sweater, and it basically just flies out. And once you lose that piece of jewelry, or once it comes out of your nostrils, sometimes it's hard to get it back in there. So I already went over what the nostril screw is, how you went from pre-bent to bending, basically custom bending your nostril screws for each client. And then the big breakthrough for me was neo-metal jewelry. So the thing with neo-metal is that you basically have a two-piece nostril, or two-piece jewelry. It kind of looks like what would go inside your lip piercing, or what would go inside your tragus piercing. And actually, I use the same jewelry for all these piercings. So neo-metal, the thing that I really love about them is that they're very compatible. So the ends will fit into all different lengths and all different thickness. So you can have 18-gauge nostril in your nose piercing, and then you can have a 16-gauge tragus in your tragus, 16-gauge flat back in your tragus. But those front ends are compatible. So if you have an opal in your tragus and then you have a CC in your nostril and you want to switch them around, you can, so that it's really cool. And the thing about these pieces is that it has a little tiny disc on the inside, so it sits pretty comfortably inside the nose, and then you secure the jewelry on the top, so you kind of just get it like that. And if you want to change out the piece, you don't have to change the whole piece. You can leave the flat back in your nose and just change the tops. Also, we talked about a little bit of swelling in the first few days, so usually I would start off with a little bit longer length of a post, and if later on the client feels like it's moving around a lot or if it's a little loose, we can switch out that post for something shorter so it fits really snug. So then when it comes to techniques, every piercer might have a different technique or a different approach to nostril piercings. I won't go over the details of all the different techniques. The most common technique will be wherein a piercer will kind of stick a receiving tube in your nose. This is usually like made out of stainless steel or either Pyrex, which is glass, or even they make some disposable silicone or polymer receiving tubes. So yeah, basically what happens is they stick a little tube in your nose, which basically prevents the needle from piercing your septum also, so you don't get two piercings at the same time. Pierce from the outside in, and then usually they get the nostril screw in there, which is the most common, I guess, the most commonly used piece of jewelry for the piercing. But then if you're piercing with neometal, the piece goes actually from the inside out. So you can use the same technique, pierce outside in, and then kind of just use a pin taper to slide the jewelry, either butt the needle with the taper and slide it this way, and then just get the jewelry out. Or, you know, some piercers are okay with sliding the needle back through with the receiving tube, with the pin taper, and getting the jewelry in there. So those are kind of the most common techniques. I myself pierce freehand, and what freehand means is that I try to use as little tools as possible. And when I do use tools, a lot of times these tools are disposable, so I try to keep things as simple as possible. So when I do a nostril piercing, I just basically, and I'm going to show you right here, so there should be a video here. So basically what I'm doing is just kind of holding onto the nostril and then just piercing it, and from the outside in, being really careful to not, you know, hit the nostril, the inside of the septum or anything like that. And then the other technique I use for neometal jewelry, which is a little bit more advanced. Maybe not all piercers do this, but sometimes if I feel comfortable, if I'm feeling like I have my game on, usually I will pierce from the inside out. So usually I'll have the mark on the outside and then just use the back of the needle to kind of find my spot and just pierce from the outside in, and then just slide the jewelry in there. This way I'm avoiding a little bit of too much piercing one way and backing the needle another way and doing all that stuff. The other question I get a lot is about the placement for the ring. So usually I do not start nostril piercings with a ring. I wait usually 3 to even 4 months. Usually I wait 4 months actually. And once the piercing is fully healed, then we can switch over to the ring. But definitely I do not start it off with rings ever. The one thing is that when you do get your piercing, you should tell your piercer that you want eventually to put a ring in there, so they take into account where they're going to place it, so when you come back you have a really nice fit ring. Because it does happen that you get a pierce and the piercer doesn't ask you if you want a ring later on, and you don't tell them, and then you end up with a really high placement, and when you want to put a ring in there, it's just going to be a huge ring. So take that into account. And then the last thing that I want to talk to you about is the bumps. The bumps are super annoying, and the bumps do happen. Cartilage piercings just tend to get hypertrophic scarring, and so you gotta be really careful with that. It's not the end of the world. Your piercing's not infected. It's not, you don't have to take the jewelry out, but they are kind of annoying. And the thing about them is that they usually happen when your piercing's under pressure. And what that means is that you're either sleeping on it, or you bumped it, or maybe even if the piercing wasn't done the proper angle, it might be putting pressure on itself, so you get a little extra scarring on it. And there's ways to take care of them. Honestly, I feel like the best thing you can do sometimes is just kind of let it be, let it alone, leave it alone, don't touch it, don't mess with it, and just kind of let it, dry out and let it do its own thing. But one of the things that I do recommend is doing compress with chamomile tea. So chamomile tea actually has a lot of really awesome healing properties. And yeah, you basically, just like you're gonna make your tea, and then the tea bag itself, kind of warm and damp, you put on the piercing and just let it sit there for a few minutes. You can do it a few times if you want, and yeah, just having that warm tea bag on the piercing will help alleviate those little bumps that you have. Other than that, just leave it alone, don't touch it, don't mess with it. The last thing I want to talk to you about is the worst type of jewelry that you can put in this piercing. I don't know why they make them anymore, I don't know why, but you can buy them by the dozen probably for $1 on the internet. And these are nose bones. These are not appropriate for piercings, and I actually have a picture of a client who got pierced somewhere else and came back and asked me to take this out. These are horrible. I usually cut them out with a nail clipper, because basically what it's almost like a neo metal piece where you have a disc or a ball on the inside, but the ball doesn't come off, so you basically have to rip it through the piercing. So it's really uncomfortable, and it's really not the best way to get, it's not the best way to have a new piercing. So that concludes the nostril piercing video. I hope this was helpful to you guys. I've been slacking a little bit on posting videos, and I mean, this is kind of very time consuming for me. I try to make time in my day to make these sort of videos. Also, of course, there's the editing and all that stuff. This is not the easiest thing for me to do. Sometimes it's hard for me to put myself in front of a camera and just talk to you guys. And I'm trying to do it, and I'm trying to talk to you guys as if you were my clients, and just trying to explain things to you so you know what to expect when you go get a piercing done. But I don't know, lately there's been so much going on in the world that sometimes it's just hard to, try to get in the mood to just be it almost feels like, I mean, even though this is me, I'm just being myself, but it still feels like I have to be like more animated to be entertaining and all that. And lately, I mean, I guess it all started with like the friggin' Nazi supremacists that at Charlottesville, and then Houston's hurricane, and then now Florida's, and then there was an earthquake here in Mexico, and there's all these things going on in the world, and there's all these people needing help all around the world, and it's weird just sitting here and watching all these things going on and feeling a little bit helpless. And so I don't know, but I do enjoy making these videos. I feel like this is the way that I can contribute to the YouTube world, and hopefully you guys learn something from these videos. And if you do have any other questions, please leave it in the comments below. I love piercings. This is something that has been my passion since I was like 15 years old. I have not stopped doing this since I was 15 years old. And basically, I feel like I'm very lucky to have found my passion in life really early on. And sometimes it feels like I'm surrounded by people who are still struggling and finding what their calling is and what their passion is. And basically, if they feel like maybe I'll just work a regular job until I find, that one thing that I want to do in life. And so I know it's a little bit of a rough scenario that people might find themselves in, but honestly, life is so fragile, and this is something that maybe the news reminds us of, like watching how life can just be changed so quickly by things that are not under our control. I mean, there might be a war happening anytime soon. There's friggin' H-bombs going off in North Korea and all these different things that it's just like, alright, well, if this is something that might just end any day, I'm just gonna try to make the best out of it. And if I can help you guys get inspired and go do awesome things, I hope that does happen. I hope you enjoy these videos, and hopefully I'll feel more eager to make these videos more often. So this was, sorry about that rant. So this video was on nostril piercings. I don't know what I'm going to do next. If you have a piercing that you want me to talk about, please leave it in the comments below. I hope you guys have an awesome weekend and go do something awesome.